Here's something nobody warns you about. Toxic relationships don't start toxic. They start exciting, intense, almost electric. The connection feels stronger than anything you've experienced before. The highs are higher. The chemistry is undeniable. And everything moves fast. Faster than feels normal. But it feels so good that you don't question it. And then slowly, so slowly you almost don't notice, things start shifting. Small things at first, things you explain away, things you rationalize because the good parts still feel so good. By the time most people recognize a relationship is toxic, they're already deep inside it, already emotionally invested, already making compromises they never thought they'd make. This video is about catching it early, before the investment gets so deep that leaving feels impossible. 7 signs. The earlier you recognize them, the more they protect you. Let's get into it. Sign number 1, everything moves unusually fast. This one feels like a positive sign in the moment, which is exactly what makes it dangerous. She's incredibly intense from the very beginning. She wants to spend every moment with you. She talks about the future early, plans, labels, deep emotional declarations that feel meaningful but come before the relationship has had time to actually develop. Psychologists call this love bombing, and it's one of the most reliable early indicators of a toxic dynamic. Here's why it happens. Healthy attraction builds gradually. It deepens through shared experiences over time, through seeing each other in different situations, through the slow accumulation of trust that only time creates. When someone pushes for extreme closeness extremely early, before any of that foundation has been built, it usually signals one of two things. Either they're not emotionally healthy enough to let things develop at a natural pace, or they're unconsciously or consciously trying to create a level of attachment before you've had enough time to see them clearly. Both are problems. Genuine connection doesn't need to be rushed. If the pace feels unusual, if things are moving faster than feels comfortable, even though it also feels exciting, pay attention to that feeling. It's telling you something important. Sign number 2, your emotions are constantly being managed. In a healthy dynamic, both people take responsibility for their own emotional states. There's mutual support, but neither person's mood becomes the other person's full-time job. In a toxic dynamic, something different happens. You find yourself constantly monitoring her emotional state and adjusting your behavior to manage it. You choose your words carefully, not because you want to be kind, but because you're afraid of how she'll react if you don't. You avoid certain topics, not because they're genuinely sensitive, but because the reaction when you breach them is disproportionate and exhausting. And here's the insidious part. This pattern usually develops so gradually that you don't notice you're in it until you're deep inside it. You just slowly start editing yourself, becoming more careful, more cautious, more aware of potential landmines. That constant vigilance has a cost. It creates a low-level anxiety that becomes your baseline. And baseline anxiety in a relationship is one of the clearest signs that something is fundamentally wrong. You should be able to be yourself around someone you're in a relationship with, not a managed, edited, walking on eggshells version of yourself. Actually, yourself. If you're not, now that's a sign worth taking seriously. Sign number 3, your other relationships start shrinking. This one happens so gradually that most people don't recognize it until they look back and realize their world has quietly gotten smaller. It starts subtly. She's not comfortable when you spend time with certain friends. She makes comments about the people in your life, your friends, your family, that are slightly critical. Nothing dramatic, just enough to create a mild friction around those relationships. Enough to make spending time with them feel slightly more complicated than it used to. And over time, without any single dramatic moment you could point to, you find yourself spending less time with the people who were there before her. Your social world contracts, your support network weakens, and you become more dependent on her as a result. Psychologists call this isolation, and it's one of the most common patterns in toxic relationships because it's almost never obvious when it's happening. Healthy relationships expand your world. They add to your existing life rather than replacing it. A genuinely good partner wants you to have strong friendships, wants you to be close to your family, understands that a full life makes you a better partner, not a distracted one. If your world has been getting smaller since she entered it, pay attention to that. Sign number 4, conflict never actually resolves. Every relationship has conflict. That's not the issue. The issue is what happens after the conflict. In a healthy dynamic, 2 people disagree, they work through it, something gets understood or resolved, and both people move forward. The conflict serves a purpose. It creates clarity. It deepens understanding. In a toxic dynamic, conflict follows a completely different pattern. Arguments don't resolve, they just stop. The same issues come back again and again in slightly different forms. Resolution never actually happens because one or both people are more invested in winning than in understanding. Or, and this is particularly common, conflict gets used as leverage. Past mistakes get brought up consistently. Apologies get accepted and then referenced again later. You find yourself in a pattern where you're constantly paying for things that were supposedly resolved. That pattern has a specific psychological name: scorekeeping. And it's fundamentally incompatible with a healthy relationship because it means nothing is ever truly forgiven. Everything is stored as potential ammunition. If your conflicts feel circular, if you keep having versions of the same argument without anything actually changing, that's not a communication problem. It's a compatibility problem, and it's worth seeing clearly. Sign number 5, how you feel about yourself is changing. This is the sign most people miss because it happens so gradually and because the mechanism is so subtle. When you entered this dynamic, you had a certain relationship with yourself, a certain level of self-confidence, a certain ease with who you are. Maybe not perfect. Nobody's relationship with themselves is perfect, but a baseline sense of your own worth that felt relatively stable. And slowly, through small comments, through the way conflict gets handled, through the subtle ways your behavior gets criticized or your judgment gets questioned, that baseline starts shifting. You second guess yourself more than you used to. You feel less certain about your own perceptions. You find yourself wondering if your feelings are valid or if you're being too sensitive. You're less confident in your own judgment than you were before. Psychologists call this gaslighting when it's done deliberately, the systematic undermining of someone's trust in their own perception. But even when it's not deliberate, the effect is the same. A gradual erosion of your relationship with yourself. Your relationship with yourself should improve in a healthy relationship. Not because your partner fixes your insecurities, but because genuine love and acceptance create conditions where you feel more secure, not less. If you feel worse about yourself than you did before this relationship, that is one of the most important signals you can receive. Sign number 6, there's a consistent imbalance in effort. Healthy relationships have natural fluctuations in who gives more at any given time. Life creates circumstances where one person needs more support for a period. That's normal, and it's part of what partnership means. But there's a difference between natural fluctuation and a consistent structural imbalance, where one person is always investing more, always initiating, always the one making accommodations, while the other person receives without reciprocating in any meaningful way. This imbalance shows up across multiple dimensions. Who initiates contact more consistently? Who makes more effort to resolve conflict? Who adjusts their schedule more frequently? Who expresses more care and consideration in day-to-day interactions? In isolation, any one of these could just be a personality difference. But when the imbalance is consistent, when it shows up across all of these dimensions simultaneously and over an extended period, it's not a personality difference, it's a dynamic. And that dynamic always ends the same way. The person giving more eventually runs out of reasons to keep giving, and the person taking more never had enough skin in the game to fight for what they had. You deserve someone who matches your investment, bro. Not perfectly. Relationships aren't transactional, but roughly, genuinely, consistently. Sign number 7, your gut has been telling you something is wrong. This is the last sign and in some ways the most important one. You already know. On some level, beneath the rationalization, beneath the hope, beneath the genuine love you might feel for this person, you already know something isn't right. You've known for a while. That quiet, persistent feeling that something is off that you keep pushing down because the alternatives feel more painful than staying. Here's what I want you to understand about that feeling. It's not anxiety. It's not overthinking. It's not you being difficult or demanding or expecting too much. It's information, the most honest information you have access to. Your nervous system is extraordinarily good at detecting safety and threat in your environment, including your relational environment. When something is genuinely wrong in a relationship, your body knows before your mind has finished building the case. That background discomfort, that persistent low-level unease, that feeling that you're always slightly waiting for the next thing to go wrong, that's your nervous system telling you something your rational mind is still trying to explain away. You don't need to have a perfect logical argument for why something feels wrong. You don't need to be able to point to a single dramatic event. The persistent feeling is enough. It's more than enough. Trust it. Here's the honest truth about everything we covered today. None of these signs make someone a bad person. Most toxic relationship patterns don't come from malice. They come from unhealed wounds, unhealthy learned behaviors, and two people who weren't right for each other trying to make something work that wasn't working. But understanding that doesn't mean staying. It doesn't mean continuing to absorb the cost of someone else's unresolved issues at the expense of your own well-being. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, where you feel seen, where your world expands rather than contracts, where conflict leads somewhere, where you feel more like yourself, not less. If multiple signs in this video felt uncomfortably familiar, take that seriously. Not with panic, not with immediate dramatic action, just with honesty. Because the earlier you see something clearly, the more options you have. And if you're still in the earlier stages, still trying to understand whether what you're feeling is real attraction or just the beginning of something toxic, go back and watch our video on every sign a girl has a crush on you. Understanding the difference between genuine, healthy attraction and intensity that moves too fast is one of the most important things you can learn. It's already on the channel. Go check it out right now.